Welcome to Mark Noir Detectives.
Like, subscribe, and stay with the mystery. Which part of the world are you watching from?
I am your host, Nero Wolfe, and tonight a fresh case of intrigue lies before us.
Chapter 1. The Noon Print with No Shadow. If you stay long enough at West 35th Street, you learn that trouble does not always arrive with sirens and a broken lock. Sometimes it comes in with a hat in its hands and a plain envelope held like a bill you did not run up but still have to pay. It was 5 minutes past 11:30 when the bell rang. Fritz answered, because Fritz answers, and because I was in the office with the morning paper propped open like a screen while I watched Wolfe pretend not to notice. Wolfe was in his chair with a book open, and his eyes half-lidded. The posture of a man who intends to do nothing until the universe learns manners. The desk in front of him was as tidy as a church, except for the ashtray and the pencil tray, which had never been used for anything but intimidation. Fritz stepped in with his soft tread and that look of polite gravity that means the world has intruded. "A young lady to see you, Archie. She says it is urgent." "Urgent is a word that keeps the brownstones standing," I said. "Send her in." Wolfe made a sound that could be translated as, "Do not encourage them." I ignored it, which is my professional specialty. The young woman entered with Fritz at her shoulder. She was in her 20s, neat without being fancy, and her face had the strained composure of someone who has rehearsed a calm voice in a mirror and knows it will betray her anyway. Chestnut hair pinned back, eyes too alert for the hour. She carried a plain manila envelope. Her hat was in her hands, and she held it as if it were the last object on earth that still made sense. "Mr. Wolfe," she said, "my name is Lila Hart." Wolfe inclined his head a fraction. That is as close as he gets to a greeting unless there is a duke involved. I gestured to the chair across from me. She sat like a person who expected the floor to tilt. Then she opened the envelope and took out a photograph. Not a studio portrait. Not a family snapshot. A street photograph, sharp enough that you could count the buttons on a stranger's coat, a New York block in full daylight, the hard noon sun pouring down the way it does when it wants to prove a point, people mid-step, mid-turn, frozen in the ordinary business of existing, a delivery truck with its rear door half open, a woman with a shopping bag, a man with his collar up, though it was warm, a traffic light caught between colors, and in the center, slightly forward of the others, was Lila Hart, except that the Lila Hart in the photograph had never agreed to be there for the photographer, and her expression showed it. She looked distracted, as if something had just tugged at her attention from the side. It was a good, candid shot. Too good. But it was not the expression that made the picture wrong. Every person in the image had a shadow, sharp and definite, angled slightly to the right and back. The truck had a shadow. The curb had a shadow. Even the trash can had a shadow that looked like it belonged to something important. Lila Hart did not. Where her feet met the pavement, there was nothing but pavement, bright and bare and innocent. She looked like she had been pasted into the scene with careful scissors and no respect for the sun. I felt my eyebrows lift. "That's a handsome trick. Where did you get it?" "It was delivered to my office yesterday morning." Her voice held steady by force. "In an envelope with no return address." Wolfe extended a hand, palm up. It was not a grab, it was a demand made polite by timing. She passed the photograph across the space between them. Her fingertips hesitated on the edge before she let go. Wolfe took it and studied it without hurry. That in itself was a confession of interest. Wolfe does not hurry for anything when he chooses to give an object his time. It is because he has decided the object deserves his mind. "Your office," Wolfe said. "You are employed." "Yes." "Where?" She swallowed. "Morland and Pierce." I knew the name. Everyone who can read a stock table knows it. Morland and Pierce sold confidence for a fee. Their offices were downtown, glass and marble, and their politeness had teeth. Wolfe's eyes did not flicker, but something in him settled into attention, the way a cat settles when it hears a faint mouse. Money cases do that to him. Not because he wants money. He likes to prove that other people's money does not make them smarter. You work there in what capacity? Wolfe asked. I am a junior analyst. I gave her a look. Junior analysts do not usually get photographs dropped on their chairs unless the photographer has a crush or a plan. She shook her head hard. I never posed. I never saw anyone take it. I did not even know it existed until it arrived. Wolfe's voice stayed mild. The obvious inference is that someone wanted you to see it. Yes, she said, and to be afraid. Have you been threatened? Not in words. She pressed her fingers against the hat brim until the straw bent. But the envelope was on my chair when I came in. Inside was the photograph and a single sheet of paper. Wolfe held out his other hand. The paper. Her eyes widened. I did not bring it. I was afraid to keep it. I threw it away. Wolfe's gaze tightened by a degree. It is remarkable how much pressure that adds. A regrettable impulse, Miss Hart. I know. The words came fast. I know. But I read it, and it was like someone leaned close to my ear. What did it say? I asked. She looked at me, and for a moment her rehearsed calm cracked. It said, "Noon has no mercy." I made a small sound. Not quite a whistle, because Fritz was nearby and I try to keep my musical experiments private. That's poetry for hire. Wolfe's eyes remained on the photograph. It is also a warning. Why? I don't know. Her voice caught on the last word and she hated herself for it. I have no enemies. I do my work. I go home. I pay my rent. I have no scandals, no debts, nothing. That, I said, is the sort of statement that starts a list. Wolfe leaned back a fraction. Miss Hart, I will ask questions. You will answer them precisely. The success of my efforts depends on your cooperation. She nodded quickly. First, Wolfe said, the envelope, describe it. Plain manila, no writing. Except my name and the firm address, typed, not handwritten. The paper stock, Wolfe said. She blinked. The photograph paper. The sheet you discarded. It was white, standard, maybe heavier than usual. She grimaced. I am sorry. I did not look at it like a scientist. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Your description is inadequate. I cleared my throat. Let's not convict her for panic. Lila, who could have put that envelope on your chair before you got there? Cleaning staff, security, early co-workers. How is the floor accessed? It is a secured floor, she said. You need a badge. Security is in the lobby. The cleaning staff comes after hours, but the floor is not locked to employees. Anyone with the badge can enter. Anyon? I repeated. How many is anyone? Hundreds. Fine, I said. Now give us the closer circle. Who sits near you? She named 3 people. A man in compliance, a woman in marketing, another analyst with a cheerful face, and the sort of harmlessness that sometimes hides talent for harm. I made a mental note and kept my face neutral. Archie Goodwin's face is a tool. You do not show your tools to a stranger unless you want them taken, Wolfe said. Now, the exact hour. I don't understand. The exact hour when the fear moved in, Wolfe said. When you first felt that this was not a practical joke. She drew a breath and stared at the photograph, as if it might provide a timestamp by pity. Yesterday, I got to my desk at 8:30. I saw the envelope. I opened it. I saw the photograph. At first I thought it was meant for someone else. Then I read the note, and I felt cold. Cold is not an hour, Wolfe said. I softened my voice. Wolfe can interrogate a lamppost into confessing its wiring, but people are softer. Lila, did anything else happen at that moment? A sound, a person, a message. Sometimes the mind marks time by what it notices. She hesitated, then nodded slowly. When I looked up from the note, my computer screen was black and I saw my reflection. It was like I was looking at someone else. The clock in the corner of the screen said 8:32. Wolfe nodded once. That was his version of approval. And the photograph, Wolfe said. You say it was taken at noon? Yes. She leaned forward, tapping the lower right corner with one finger. There is a storefront clock. You can see it if you enlarge, 12 o'clock exactly. Also, the shadows are straight down. Wolfe studied the corner she indicated. He did not ask for a magnifying glass. He has eyes that make magnifying glasses jealous. Then he shifted the photograph slightly, angling it toward the light from the window, as if the paper's gloss might confess something. "Where was this taken?" Wolfe asked. "On 39th Street near 6th Avenue. Her answer came quick. "I walk that way sometimes at lunch. But yesterday I did not. I was at my desk all day. I did not leave the building until 6. "Then the photograph is not yesterday," I said. "No," she agreed, "but I do not know when it was. I never noticed anyone taking pictures." Wolfe's mouth tightened. "Miss Hart, the absence of a shadow is the salient fact. It is also the most easily fabricated. Have you considered that the photograph may be altered?" "Yes," she said. "That was my first thought. But it is still me. Whoever did it can do worse. They can send it to my supervisor, or to compliance, or to someone who will make it a reason." "A reason for what?" Wolfe asked. "For firing me." The words came out with heat now, and I liked her better for it. "Or for investigating me. At Morland and Pierce, an investigation is like a stain. Even if you wash it out, the cloth remembers." Wolfe held the photograph by two corners, as if it might contaminate him. "You fear for your employment. That is your motive for coming here." "Yes." "Do you know what the photograph implies?" Wolfe asked. She frowned. "It implies I was there." "It implies," Wolfe corrected, "that you were there and yet not entirely present. A person without a shadow is in the minds of the foolish, a thing without substance, or a thing without honesty," I said. "So the message is in bright light. You will be exposed." She nodded. "Yes." Wolfe set the photograph on his desk, face up, and studied the paper itself now. The edges, the gloss, the tiny scuff near one corner. He was not looking at the image anymore. He was looking at the object. Wolfe can read objects the way I read a menu. "Miss Hart," he said, "you brought the envelope." She slid it out of her bag and handed it to him. Wolfe sniffed it lightly. "That is not a joke. Wolfe's senses are part of his equipment, and his nose is as offended by cheap perfume as his mind is offended by cheap reasoning." He ran a finger along the flap, then peered into the inside, then held it close to the light. I watched him, because there is no point pretending not to. When Wolfe works, it is like watching a machine built for a purpose no one else has imagined. "What else was in the envelope?" Wolfe asked. "Only the photograph and the note. No fibers, no powder, no residue." "I did not notice." Wolfe grunted. "You did not notice?" "Yes." "I rescued her again. Lila, who else knew you received it?" "Only me at first." Then she shook her head. "No, that is not true. My supervisor, Mr. Caro, came by at 9:30 to ask for a report. I must have looked strange because he asked if I was ill. I said I had not slept." "Did you show him the photograph?" I asked. "Number good," I said. "That would have been a fine way to spread a fire in a library." Wolfe's eyes lifted to her. "What is Mr. Caro's first name?" "Duncan." Wolfe absorbed it. "And your work? Describe it. Not the title. The tasks, the access." She inhaled and chose her words carefully. "I work on portfolio performance for certain accounts, mostly pension funds and corporate clients. I prepare reports and risk assessments. Sometimes I pull transaction history. Sometimes I see client instructions. I am not allowed to move funds. I am not allowed to approve anything." "Do you handle any client of significance?" Wolfe asked. She paused. "All clients are significant to the firm." That was a firm answer, and it sounded practiced. "Miss Hart," Wolfe said, "you have come to me. Do not give me the firm's brochure. Give me the truth." Her eyes flashed, then dimmed. "There is one account that has been tense. A family foundation, the Harrowby Foundation." That name rang a bell in my head. New York philanthropy has a talent for being both generous and unpleasant. Harrowby could mean old money, museum boards, and donors who expect their portraits hung at eye level. And your role? Wolfe said. I compile monthly performance summaries. I also pull the transaction logs for internal review. For internal review by whom? By compliance. She glanced at the ceiling as if the word might be overheard. Because there have been unusual trades. I felt my interest sharpen. Unusual how? She hesitated. Wolfe's voice came like a paperweight. Miss Hart. Trades that do not match the Foundation's stated risk profile, she said. Speculative positions, short-term movements. It does not fit. And who benefits? Wolfe asked. I do not know. Her hands tightened on her hat again. It could be a mistake. It could be an overzealous manager. It could be a system issue, but compliance asked for reports twice in 1 week. Who manages the account? I asked. Mr. Carrow oversees it, she said. But there is also a senior partner, Mr. Morland, who takes interest. Wolfe nodded slowly. So, you have proximity to an account where there may be irregularity, and you receive a photograph, implying you are a person without a shadow, a person without substance, a person who can be erased. She swallowed. Yes, I said, and the note says noon has no mercy. That sounds like daylight will show what you are, or what they want others to think you are. Wolfe leaned back, his hands steepled. He looked, for a moment, not at Lila Hart, but through her, into a pattern only he could see. Miss Hart, he said, you say you have no enemies. That is likely false. You may have no enemies among your friends, but you may have enemies among those whose comfort depends on your silence. She opened her mouth, then closed it. A flicker of understanding passed through her face. I watched her carefully. People can lie out of habit, out of fear, out of loyalty, or out of stupidity. She did not strike me as stupid. Fear was doing plenty of work, but something else was there too. The cautious restraint of a person trained to avoid saying the wrong thing in a building full of expensive ears, Wolfe said. You will retrieve the note. She stiffened. I cannot. I threw it in the office waste bin. It was emptied. Then you will obtain any remaining evidence, Wolfe said. Any envelope, any packaging, any other item delivered to you, and you will bring it to me immediately. Now, I will determine whether this is the work of an amateur or a professional. That is comforting, I muttered. Wolfe ignored me. Miss Hart, you will answer one more question. Have you recently been anywhere at noon on 39th Street near 6th Avenue? She blinked, startled by the specificity. I do not think so. I mean, I have walked there many times, but not recently. Define recently, Wolfe said. She tried to. Not in the last 2 weeks. I have been busy. I eat lunch at my desk. Wolfe grunted. Then the photograph was taken earlier, or it was staged, or it was assembled. I said, Lila, do you recognize any other person in that photograph? Anyone you know from the office, from your building, from your life? She leaned forward, squinting. Her eyes moved from face to face. Number, none of them. Do you recognize the storefront? I asked. Yes, it is a print shop, or it used to be. A place that does copying and photos. Wolfe's eyes sharpened. A print shop, that is useful. I nodded. It gives the culprit an easy pipeline. If the image was printed there, someone might remember. Also, it means the clue is not only in the picture, it may be in the paper. Wolfe looked at me as if I had said something mildly tolerable. That is as close as I get to applause. Fritz reappeared quietly. Lunch will be ready in 10 minutes, Mr. Wolfe. Wolfe's expression softened, which proves he has a heart. It is just located near his stomach. Very well. He turned back to Lila Hart. Miss Hart, I will accept your case. My fee will be discussed when the urgency is replaced by clarity. For now, you will provide your home address and telephone number to Mr. Goodwin. You will also provide the names of your supervisor and any relevant colleagues. Mr. Goodwin will visit your office. Her eyes widened. You will send him. I will not leave my home, Wolfe said, as if announcing a law of physics. I smiled at her. Do not worry. I leave enough for both of us. She managed a tight, grateful half-smile. The fear in her was still there, but now it had company. Hope is a dangerous companion, but people insist on bringing it along. As she stood to go, she looked once more at the photograph on Wolfe's desk. Mr. Wolfe, why would anyone do this? Why the missing shadow? Wolfe's answer was calm, almost bored, and that made it worse. Because it is a clever insult. Because it implies you are not what you appear to be. Because it is a threat that can be shown to others without words. And because the person who sent it believes you will be more manageable if you doubt your own substance. She swallowed again. I do not doubt myself. Wolfe's eyes flicked up. You are here. She left, guided out by Fritz, and the front door closed with that solid brownstone finality that makes you feel safe. Right up until you remember, it has a bell. I exhaled, so we have a spooky photograph and a poetic note. Anything else? Wolfe stared at the photograph as if it owed him money. It is not spooky. It is a communication. The question is not whether it is fabricated. The question is why this particular fabrication was chosen. I leaned forward. And the print shop, that seems like a start. Yes, Wolfe said. Also the precise noon. Also the choice of a bright street. Also the implication of exposure. All of that suggests a mind that enjoys symbolism. Or a mind that wants her to think it does, I said. Wolfe's mouth moved slightly, which in him counts as a smile. Archie, bring me a magnifying glass. I got it from the drawer. The one Wolfe pretends not to know is there. He took the photograph, examined the storefront clock again, then the pavement near Lila Hart's shoes, then the edges of her coat where light met dark. He was not looking for beauty. He was looking for seams. While he worked, I glanced past the office door toward the hall. Beyond it was the staircase that led up to the plant rooms, where Wolfe's orchids lived like pampered aristocrats. At noon, in that warm, humid air, they would be drinking light and showing off. Down here, in the cooler office, a different kind of plant had been introduced, one that grew in fear and flourished in secrets. Wolfe lowered the magnifying glass. Well, I said, what do we have? We have, Wolfe said, a print of excellent quality. We have paper that is not cheap. We have an image that is either altered by an expert or constructed by an expert. And we have one additional fact. What's that? Wolfe tapped the photograph with one finger, exactly once, like a judge delivering a sentence. The absence of the shadow is not the only absence. The light is wrong. I felt my spine straighten. Wrong how? Wolfe's eyes met mine, and for a moment the room felt smaller, as if the walls themselves had leaned in to listen. If the sun were as it appears, the shadows of the other figures would not fall exactly as they do. The scene has been composed. The question is by whom, and what else has been composed in Miss Hart's life? Fritz called that lunch was served. Wolfe rose, and I rose with him, and we went to the dining room where the table waited, polished and orderly, the sort of place where a man can believe the world makes sense. But even as I sat down and Fritz set a plate in front of me, my eyes kept seeing that bright noon street and the neat lack of darkness at a young woman's feet. Noon has no mercy, the note said. Fine. We would see how much mercy it had for the person who thought they could frighten a client in Nero Wolfe's office. Chapter 2. The street that won't. Lie streets have a quality people lack. A man can swear loyalty at breakfast and forget it by lunch, but a curb stays where it was poured, and a crack in the pavement keeps its crooked opinion for years. That is why, when Lila Hart called me at 10 the next morning and said she had not slept, I told her we were going to take a walk with the photograph. Where? She asked. To your office again. No, I said, to the only witness in the case that cannot be bribed, threatened, or sentimental concrete. I picked her up near her building on the east side. She looked neat, but only because panic will keep a person ironing shirts at midnight. She got into the taxi with the caution of a woman climbing into a rowboat during a storm. I had the photograph in a folder, and the envelope too. Wolfe had kept it overnight like evidence in a cathedral, then handed it to me at breakfast with a look that meant, do not fold it, do not smudge it, and do not let your cheerful habits ruin my case." As we rode downtown, Lila stared straight ahead, and I watched her the way you watch a person carrying a glass of water across a carpet. One bump can make a mess. "The stamp on the back," I said. She turned. "What stamp?" I pulled the photo out just enough for her to see the reverse without bending it. There was a faint purple mark, the kind a hurried clerk uses when the register is ringing, a circle with letters. Inside it, a line of numbers. "Corner code," I said. "Print shops love codes. They think it makes them look like banks." Lila leaned in. "I never noticed." "You did not notice because you were busy being threatened," I said. "The stamp says 6th and 39th, which matches what you told us. It also says Kine Repro, which matches the storefront in the picture. That gives us a place that might remember the print." She swallowed. "If someone printed it there, they will deny it." "Maybe," I said. "But businesses remember money better than they remember loyalty. Also, they remember headaches, and a private detective asking questions is a headache that can be relieved by telling the truth." We got out near 6th Avenue and walked the last blocks. The city was in its late morning mood, loud and busy, and pretending it had invented haste. Delivery carts rattled. A man yelled about pretzels. A woman in a suit marched by with a phone pinned to her ear like a parasite. The sky was hard and bright, the kind of blue that makes you suspect it was painted. Klein Reprographics was there, just as the photograph promised. The sign in the window looked older than the paint on the building. The glass was smudged by 1,000 hands and 1,000 errands. Inside, rows of copiers and printers waited like patient beasts. I stepped in, with Lila behind me, and the bell over the door announced us with a tired jingle. A young man behind the counter looked up. His hair was shaved on the sides and piled on top like a careless monument. His expression said that customers were an unavoidable flaw in commerce. "Can I help you?" he asked. "I hope so," I said. "My name is Goodwin. This is Miss Hart. We're trying to locate the source of a photograph." The mention of a photograph brought a flicker of interest, the way a dog perks up at the word steak. He came around the counter and leaned closer. I slid the print across, face up. "Do you recognize this?" He studied it, then flipped it over. His eyes went to the stamp and the numbers. "That's our stamp," he said. "But that doesn't mean we printed it. People scan stuff and print it elsewhere, then stamp it to be cute." "People do many things," I agreed. "Do you keep logs, orders, file names? Anything tied to these numbers?" He shrugged. "It's a job ticket. We print it on the back sometimes, but those tickets go in the system." "May we speak to whoever runs the system?" I asked. He jerked his chin toward the back. "My boss is in the office. You got a subpoena?" "No," I said. "But I have a client who may be harmed and a boss at home who does not enjoy being delayed. Either you help us, or we make it official, and you spend the afternoon explaining to a uniform why you could not look up your own ticket number." He stared. I smiled politely. He decided that my smile was cheaper than trouble. He disappeared through a door. Lila stood beside me, hands clasped tight. "You did not tell him you work for Mr. Wolfe?" "I like to keep the glamour in reserve," I said. A moment later, a man came out from the back. Late 50s belly, tired eyes, shirt sleeves rolled up. He looked like he had been arguing with a printer and losing. "I'm Victor Klein," he said. "My clerk says you're asking about a photo." "That's right," I said. "This was delivered to Miss Hart. We are trying to determine when it was printed and by whom." Klein examined the photograph with professional interest, the way a butcher examines a cut of meat. "This is a good print," he said. "Not cheap. Whoever made it used a decent file." "Did you make it?" I asked. He looked at the stamp again. "This stamp is ours. The ticket number is ours. That means it came through our system. It also means I can look it up." Lila exhaled, a small sound like a prayer. Klein went to a computer behind the counter and tapped at the keyboard with 2 fingers, hunting and pecking. The clerk hovered like a bored shadow. I kept my voice casual. "Does your system keep customer names?" "It keeps whatever they enter," Klein said. "Half the time it's Mickey Mouse." He found something and grunted. "Ticket." he said. Printed 3 days ago. 2 copies. Picked up same day. My ears pricked. 3 days ago, that would be Monday. Yes, he squinted at the screen. Order name is P. Sloan. Lila stiffened. I do not know anyone named Sloan. Could be fake, I said. Payment method. Klein read. Credit card. Do you keep the last 4 digits? I asked. He shook his head. For privacy, we keep a transaction code. The card company keeps the rest. Do you keep security camera footage? I asked. Klein gave me a look like I had asked if he kept unicorns. We got a camera over the register it records. Mostly, it records people stealing pens. Why? Because someone used your shop to print a photograph intended to threaten a woman, I said. And I would like to see who it was. Klein's expression shifted. The tired annoyance was replaced by a quick flare of worry. Shop owners are loyal to one thing, staying open. Threaten, he repeated. Lila's voice came out small. I am afraid they will use it to ruin my job. Klein looked at her properly for the first time. His face softened a fraction. Then he sighed. Okay, he said. Come on. He led us to the back, past stacks of paper and toner boxes and a machine that looked like it could print a billboard if you fed it enough ink. In a cramped office, he pulled up a grainy camera feed and scrolled through timestamps. This is Monday, he said. Late afternoon. The footage showed the counter, the register, and the door. Customers came and went in a dull parade. Then, at 4:17, a man stepped in. He wore a baseball cap. He had his collar up. He moved with the quick confidence of someone who does not expect to be stopped. He placed a folder on the counter, said something we could not hear, handed over a card, waited, then took a flat package and left. Klein paused it. That's him. That's the pickup. I leaned closer. The angle was bad, but I could see the man's build. Medium height, lean, no limp. He kept his head down, but his jawline was visible. Lila leaned in too, then jerked back as if the screen had bitten her. That, she said, voice tight, looks like someone from my building. That's not enough, I said. Lots of people look like lots of people. Klein shrugged. You want a copy of the footage. You need police. I can probably arrange cooperation, I said, thinking of Inspector Kramer and his tolerance for Wolfe's habits. For now, tell me this. Could you have altered the photograph here? Klein snorted. We print. We do not do fancy editing. If someone brought us a file, we print what's in the file. So the trick was in the file, I said. Yes, I thanked him and we left, stepping back into the city's noise. Lila looked as if she had been given a thread and did not know whether to pull it. Now, I said, we go to the street. We walked to the corner shown in the photograph. It was only a block away. I held the print at chest height and compared it to the scene in front of me. The buildings were the same, though one storefront had changed hands. The angle of the curb matched. The fire hydrant was still there, painted a newer red. The city was always renovating its face. But bones stay bones. The street remembers, I told Lila. Now we ask it if your picture is telling the truth. We waited until noon. It is amazing how long 15 minutes can be when you are standing under a bright sky with a woman who expects her life to collapse by lunchtime. Lila kept glancing at her watch. I kept watching people. When you work for Wolfe, you learn to watch everything, because anything might turn out to be a clue, or an excuse, or a man about to swing a punch. At 12 o'clock, the sun was high and sharp. The buildings threw shadows that were short but definite. The light was clean. Everything upright confessed itself on the pavement. I held up the photograph and aligned it with the corner. All right, I said. Here is the first test shadows. I pointed, the fire hydrant's shadow, the parking meter's shadow. The pedestrians at this hour, every upright thing throws a shadow like a confession. No exceptions, not unless it is floating. Lila's eyes followed my finger, so the missing shadow is impossible. It's impossible in reality, I said. Possible in a dark room, or in a computer. I shifted the photograph. Second test, reflections. Across the street was a store window in the photograph. It reflected a slice of sky and the opposite building. In real life, it reflected exactly that, plus a newer sign. If the photo was truly taken here, at noon, the reflection should match the angle, I said. It mostly does. That means whoever built this image knew the street or used a real base photo taken here. Lila stared. So part of it is real. Seems likely. There was a crack near the curb, a thin line branching like a vein in the photograph. The same crack was visible. Good, I said. Now the third test. Pavement cracks should line up. I held the photograph close, then pointed to where Lila's shoes were in the image. The pavement there looked oddly smooth. That, I said, is where the truth got swept into the gutter. Lila frowned. I do not understand. In the photo. The pavement under you is clean in the wrong places, I said. The city does not clean like that. Dirt is democratic. It sticks to everyone. I moved the photograph closer to her. Look at the texture. See how the grain of the concrete changes right under your feet. It is subtle, but it is there, like someone patched a hole in a wall and forgot to match the paint. Lila stared until her eyes narrowed. Then she nodded slowly. It does look different. Also, I said, look at the edges of your coat, where the light meets the dark. There is a crispness there that does not match the rest of the image. Too clean. That means, she said, voice low, that I was placed into the picture. Yes, I said, but not in a sloppy way. Whoever did it was careful. They used a real street photo taken at this corner at noon, then inserted you from another photograph, then cleaned up the seams. They missed the shadow, or they removed it on purpose, and they smoothed the pavement where your original shadow would have been. Her face went pale. So they had another photograph of me. That is the part that matters, I said, because it means someone captured you in a way that could be cut out cleanly. That usually means a close shot. A portrait, a surveillance still, something steady. She swallowed. I have never posed for anything like that. People do not have to pose for cameras anymore, I said. Cameras pose for people. We stood there a moment while the city flowed around us. A man brushed by, annoyed. A woman stepped around us with the careful contempt of someone who thinks standing still is a moral failing. Lila's voice was tight. Why do this to me? Why not just send a threat? Because threats can be denied, I said. A picture can be shown. A picture can be forwarded. A picture can make a rumor without words. Someone is building a story about you. The missing shadow is their punchline. She looked at me, and for the first time her fear turned outward, toward anger. What story? That, I said, is what we are going to find out. I took her to the side of the block where a small newsstand sat under a faded awning. The vendor was a compact man with a sharp face and quick hands. He watched everything. Vendors are like doormen. They see more than they sell. I bought a bottle of water I did not need and asked casually, "You been here long?" 8 years, he said. Why? Do you remember anything unusual Monday afternoon? I asked. A man with a cap collar up came from that print shop. He shrugged. Many men with cap. Sure, I said. But some stand out, fast walk, looking around like he does not want to be noticed. The vendor's eyes narrowed. You police? No, I said. I'm trouble prevention, he grunted, then nodded toward the avenue. Monday, yes. Man came out, looked left, looked right, then crossed not at light, almost hit by bike. He had a folder underarm. Lila leaned forward. Did you see his face? Not good, the vendor said, cap low. Did he get into a car? I asked. Black car stopped quick, he said. Not taxi, driver waiting. Man got in back. Car went. That was something. A waiting car meant planning. Planning meant resources. Did you catch a plate? I asked. He gave me a look that suggested I was flattering him. I sell papers, not miracles. Fair, I said. We left the stand, and I guided Lila toward a quieter spot near a building entrance. Now you go back to your office, I said. And you do not act like a frightened rabbit." Her eyes widened. "How?" "You act like a woman with a job," I said. "Normal, calm. But you watch, you listen. You notice who is suddenly interested in where you go for lunch, who asks questions about your work, who seems too friendly." She nodded, but her mouth tightened. "They will send another." "Let them," I said. "Each one is a message, and messages have fingerprints." We took a taxi back to West 35th. Lila dropped off at her office with a promise to call if anything changed. Then I headed home, because Wolfe does not tolerate suspense unless he is the one producing it. When I got back to the brownstone, Fritz took my coat with his usual calm competence, and I went straight to the office. Wolfe was in his chair, reading, with a look that said the world had failed to be interesting, and he blamed me. I handed him my notes first, then the photograph. "Klein Repro printed it," I said. "Ticket number matches. Printed Monday. Picked up by a man in a cap. They have camera footage. Vendor outside saw him get into a waiting black car." Wolfe took the photograph and studied it again with that maddening patience. "And the street," he said. "The street says the photo is a composite," I replied. "Base shot is real. Corner matches, reflections mostly match, pavement crack matches, but the area under her feet is too clean, and the texture changes. Someone inserted her and smoothed the seam. They removed or failed to include her shadow on purpose. They also misjudged the shadow angles for the other figures. If the final light source is supposed to be noon, the image is good enough to fool a casual eye, but not good enough to fool concrete." Wolfe's eyes lifted. "Excellent. You have done what you should." That was practically a love letter. He tapped the edge of the photograph once. "The creator was skilled but not perfect. That implies either haste or arrogance. Now, the name on the order." "Up Sloan," I said. Wolfe nodded slowly. "We will determine whether P. Sloan exists, and whether he is foolish enough to have used a card that can be traced." "And Morland and Pierce," I added. "The account she mentioned, Harrowby Foundation. Unusual trades." Compliance asked her for extra reports. Wolfe's mouth tightened. "So the pressure is likely internal. Someone fears what she knows, or fears what she may discover. And the missing shadow is their little flourish, a way of saying she is not solid, not credible." "Yes," Wolfe said. "Also a way of saying they can erase her." The room was quiet a moment. Outside, the city made its usual noise. Inside, the case settled into place like a chessboard being set. Wolfe said, "Archie, this afternoon you will go to Morland and Pierce." I blinked. Today, Wolfe said. "You will see her supervisor, you will observe the office, you will determine the nature of the pressure. You will also attempt to obtain the discarded note. Perhaps it was not destroyed as thoroughly as Miss Hart believes. People are careless with trash." "Kramer will love that," I muttered. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "You will not mention Inspector Kramer unless you must. You will mention my name only when it is useful, and you will bring me the names of the persons who could benefit from Miss Hart's discredit." I stood. "Anything else?" Wolfe looked at the photograph one more time, then set it down with care. "Yes, one more thing." "What?" Wolfe's voice was soft. "The person who created this image wanted her to come to me. They chose a method that would drive her to seek reason. Fear makes people run. Clever fear makes them run in a chosen direction." I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. "You think they wanted her on our doorstep?" "It is possible," Wolfe said. "Which means, Archie, that we are not merely solving a puzzle. We are being invited into one." I nodded once, then reached for my coat, because that is what you do when Nero Wolfe tells you the game has begun. Chapter 3. The employer who bought Silence Lila's office was not the kind where people shouted. At Morland and Pierce they murmured, the way surgeons do while they cut. The lobby smelled like polished stone and expensive restraint. Security looked at my face as if it were a smudge. I gave them my most harmless smile and my most official tone, which is a combination that has opened doors from penthouses to police stations. Lila met me by the elevators, badge clipped, eyes a shade too bright. She had the controlled tension of a violin string. "You came," she said. "I said I would," I told her. "Also, Wolfe likes a case that comes with paperwork." She tried a smile and failed. "Mr. Caro is in a meeting, but Mr. Mallory is here. He asked to see me in his private office. He never does that." "Who is Mr. Mallory?" I asked, though I already had a guess from the way her voice tightened around the name. "He owns the firm," she said. "Not Morland and Pierce, the other firm, the one I worked for before this, Mallory Protective Services." The name sounded like a brochure. I have learned that anything that calls itself protective usually means it is protecting itself. "Your employer," I said. She nodded. "Technically, I am on assignment. Morland and Pierce is a client. Mr. Mallory placed me here." "That is a useful detail you forgot to mention," I said. She looked ashamed. "I was afraid you would think I was involved." "I think you are involved," I said. "That is why I am here." Involved is not the same as guilty. We went up, past floors where money sat at desks and pretended it was not mortal. Lila led me to a corridor that grew quieter the farther we walked. At the end was a door that looked like it had been designed to keep the world out. She knocked once. A voice answered smooth and firm. "Come." Lila opened the door and stepped in. I followed. The office was big enough to be proud of itself. Glass, dark wood, a rug that looked like it had never met a shoe. Behind a desk sat a man in his 40s with hair combed back and a face that was handsome in a controlled way, like a photograph chosen by a committee. His suit fit him perfectly, which told me it was not bought off a rack. He rose when we entered, not because he was polite, but because he was used to standing when he wanted the room to notice him. "Lila," he said, as if her name were a possession. That name landed like a paperweight. His expression did not change much, but the air in the room did. "Wolfe," he said. "The detective." "The armchair version," I said, "but his mind walks plenty." Grant Mallory smiled. It was neat and practiced and had no warmth in it. I did not know Lila had taken her little anxiety to a professional. Lila stiffened. "It is not little." "No," Mallory said, still smiling. "It is dramatic. That is different." I watched his hands as he gestured toward 2 chairs. They were expensive hands, well kept. No bitten nails, no ink stains, steady. A man who signs, approves, and directs. Not a man who begs. The cufflinks caught the light with a small flash, like a wink that had been taught manners. We sat. Mallory did not. "I am told," he said, "that someone sent Lila a doctored photograph? A prank, a childish attempt to upset her. It happens when a young woman is surrounded by competitive men." "It happens," I agreed, "when someone wants her afraid." Mallory's smile widened a fraction. Afraid is such a theatrical word. She was rattled. "I have reassured her." Lila's hands clenched on her lap. "You told me to ignore it." "Correct," he said. "Ignoring foolishness is a skill," I said. "Mr. Mallory, what exactly does your company do?" He looked pleased, as if I had asked him to recite a slogan. "We provide protection, we assess threats, we manage risk. We ensure that our clients are not inconvenienced by problems." "Inconvenienced," I repeated. "That is a polite word." He gave me a sharp look. "It is an accurate one." "Some people call it pressure," I said. Mallory's eyes remained calm. "Some people call it many things. My clients call it relief." "You have been speaking too freely. That is why you are upset. You let your imagination work overtime." "I did not speak to anyone," she said. "I came to Mr. Wolfe because the photograph was meant to damage me. You told me it was nothing. You did not even ask to see it." His smile stayed fixed. "Because I know how these things operate. Someone wanted attention. They got it. The correct response is to deny them more." "It is not crude," I said. "It is good work with one deliberate flaw. The missing shadow is a message." Mallory's eyes flicked to Lila. "It is a message to stop indulging nonsense." "Then why print it twice?" I asked. "2 copies. One delivered to her, one kept for later. That is not a prank. That is leverage. Mallory's gaze returned to me for the first time. The smile dimmed. You have been talking to print shop clerks. I talk to anyone, I said. It is how I get paid. He moved around his desk and sat at last, the motion smooth. Very well, if you insist on treating it seriously, I will handle it. How? I asked. He spread his hands, calm, confident. I will speak to the people who need speaking to. I will make sure this does not reach Morland and Pierce management. I will make sure Lila's position is safe. That is what I do. And the price, I said. The price is that Lila returns to her work and stops inviting strangers into our business. Lila's voice shook. I did not invite him into your business. I invited him into mine. Mallory's eyes cooled. Your business is my business. Lila, you are my assistant. You see my receipts. You hear my calls. You schedule my meetings. That is why I placed you in that building. Because you are useful. The words were not shouted. They were worse. They were spoken as fact, I said. So you put her at Morland and Pierce, and now someone sends her a photo meant to make her look unreal. Who benefits if she looks unreliable? Mallory leaned back. You are suggesting I benefit. I am suggesting nothing yet, I said. I am observing. He held my gaze. His hands rested on the desk, fingers lightly spread, steady, not used to pleading, and not used to being questioned in his own office. I do not threaten my own employees, he said. I cultivate loyalty. Some people cultivate orchids, I said. Others cultivate fear. Both require climate control. His eyes narrowed. Wolfe's humor does not improve his logic. It improves my mood, I said. Now here is the problem. Wolfe does not like being handled. If you want this resolved quietly, the best way is to cooperate with him. Mallory smiled again, and this time it reached daylight only in the sense that it reflected it. I have no need for Nero Wolfe. Lila's voice came out thin. Then why are you here? He looked at her, and for a moment the practiced charm slipped. Something harder showed through. Because you are frightened, and frightened assistants become careless assistants. That is dangerous. I stood. Mr. Mallory, Wolfe will want to speak with you. Not because he is curious about your slogan, but because you are now part of the pattern. Mallory did not rise. Tell Wolfe that I decline. I will tell Wolfe, I said. He will interpret it the way he interprets everything, as an invitation. Mallory's eyes flashed. Then his smile returned. Composed, Goodwin, you are welcome to waste your employer's time. Just remember that my business is protection. I nodded at his hands. I noticed they are the hands of a man who gives orders, not the hands of a man who is surprised. If you are not surprised by this, Mr. Mallory, you are either very confident or very informed. He did not answer. He only watched me with that steady look. I guided Lila out. In the corridor, she exhaled as if she had been underwater. He scares me, she whispered. He should, I said. But fear can be useful if it makes you pay attention. Back at the brownstone, Wolfe listened to my report in his office, with his eyes half closed, as if my words were music and he was judging the performance. When I finished, Wolfe opened his eyes. Grant Mallory sells protection. He sells pressure, I said. Wolfe nodded, and he offered to handle it. With a smile that could cut glass, I said. He wants Lila quiet. He wants Wolfe out. Wolfe's mouth tightened, which in him is excitement dressed as annoyance. Then he will have neither. I sat in my chair and looked at Wolfe. You want him here? Yes, Wolfe said. A man who buys silence is always afraid of speech. We will discover what he fears. And if he does not come, I asked. Wolfe's eyes were calm and certain. He will come. Men like Mallory do not refuse challenges. They refuse only weakness. You will ensure he understands that I do not regard him as strong. Chapter 4. A mugging too neat. The city has a talent for making death look ordinary. If you leave a body on a sidewalk long enough, New York will step around it, complain about the inconvenience, and keep its appointment. The newspapers help. They take a complicated thing, trim it into a headline, and sell it with a photograph that makes the blood look like a design choice. That night, the city did both. I was in the front room on the second floor, the one where you can hear the street when you choose to, and pretend you cannot when you do not. I had a book open and my mind somewhere else, circling Grant Mallory like a dog circling a bone. Wolfe had refused to discuss him at dinner because Wolfe believes that talking while eating is a misuse of two excellent activities. At a little after 10, the bell rang. It was not the polite ring of a client. It was a hard push, the kind a man uses when he thinks time is a weapon. Fritz was already in bed. I went down, opened the door, and found Inspector Kramer on the stoop, hat tilted back, raincoat collar up, and that familiar expression that says he has been offered a problem and would like to return it to the sender. "Goodwin," he said. "Wolfe home." He brushed past me like a man who had promised himself he would not enter this house again and had failed. I led him to the office. Wolfe was in his chair, book in hand, looking as if Kramer were an advertisement interrupting a concert. "Wolfe," Kramer said. He did not bother with hello. He never does with Wolfe. "Inspector," Wolfe replied. That was Wolfe's version of a bow. Kramer's eyes flicked to me. "Your pal Mallory is dead." The words landed clean, like a coin on a table. Wolfe's face did not change much, but his eyes sharpened. "Mr. Mallory of Mallory Protective Services." "That's right," Kramer said. "Found under a street lamp on 9th. Wallet gone, watch gone. Papers will call it a mugging by breakfast," I said. "And you do not buy it." Kramer's mouth twisted. Random muggings don't place a body like it was arranged for a photographer. This one was neat. Too neat. Wolfe closed his book with care and set it aside. When Wolfe moves that slowly, it means his mind is moving fast. "Details," Wolfe said. Kramer sighed. "He was walking alone, no driver. That already smells funny for a man who sells protection. He got hit hard. Quick, no struggle worth mentioning. His pockets were turned, but not messy. His tie was still straight. Then they left him under the light where anyone could find him." "Cause of death?" I asked. "Blunt force," Kramer said. "One strike could have done it if the hitter knew what he was doing, medical will confirm. But the point is, it was done like punctuation, period. End of sentence." Wolfe's voice was calm. "You have come here because you believe the death intersects my current case." Kramer glared. "You were poking around him today. Don't give me the innocent face." "I do not possess an innocent face," Wolfe said. "It is not compatible with intelligence." Kramer ignored that. "I want to know what you know about him, what you are up to, and whether your client is involved." "Our client," I corrected gently, "is Lila Hart, and she is scared, not violent." Kramer looked at me. "You think scared people don't kill? You'll learn," Wolfe spoke. And his voice had that smooth authority that makes policemen grit their teeth. "Inspector, Mr. Mallory attempted to dissuade Miss Hart from retaining my services. That is the extent of his involvement thus far. I have not met him." Kramer snorted. "You want to tell me you weren't planning to?" "I was," Wolfe admitted. "Now, I may not have the pleasure." Kramer's eyes narrowed. "Then you'll cooperate." Wolfe's brow lifted slightly. "I always cooperate with the law to the extent that it does not impede my work." "That's your way of saying no," Kramer growled. "It is my way of saying yes with conditions," Wolfe replied. "Now, Inspector, tell me where this occurred precisely." Kramer gave him the cross street. Wolfe nodded once. "Very well. Archie will accompany you. He will observe the scene. If it is truly a mugging, he will waste his time. If it is not, he will learn something useful. Either outcome is acceptable." Kramer looked at me as if I were a suitcase he had not wanted to carry. "Get your coat." We went. A dead man's street has its own smell, not the body, the street itself. Wet concrete, old oil, cold air, and the faint metallic edge that comes when too many people have been afraid in the same place. There were still uniforms on site, though the crowd had thinned. A couple of night owls hovered at a distance, pretending they had not come to look. Mallory lay on his back under the street lamp. Covered now, the sheet pulled up to where his chin would have been. The lamp's light turned the sheet into a pale flag like surrender. Kramer pointed with his chin. There, I walked the edges, careful not to step where I should not, though Kramer's men had already trampled a good portion of the truth, just by being earnest. There was a scuff near the curb. There was a small dark spot that the light made look almost black. There was a neatness to it all that bothered me. Even the way he had been left was considerate, positioned where the lamp would make discovery inevitable. A random mugging that wants to be found is never random. It is an announcement. Wallet and watch, I said. Gone, Kramer replied. And he wore a nice one. Any witnesses? I asked. Not yet. I looked up and down the block. Businesses were closed, but a camera was mounted above a doorway across the street. Kramer saw my gaze. We'll pull footage. Good, I said. Also, why was he alone? You said no driver. Kramer grimaced. That's the part that makes me itch. A man like him doesn't walk alone unless he wants to be alone. I bent closer to the pavement near where his head had been. There was grit there, fine and pale, caught in a thin line where the curb met the street. It did not look like normal street dirt. It looked like something that came from somewhere else and did not belong. I did not touch it. I only noted it. Kramer, I said. Did you check his shoes? Shoes, he snapped. You want to polish them too. His shoes might tell you where he walked before he died, I said. If he stepped in something unusual, it might match this. Kramer stared at me, then waved a man over and barked an order. I looked around again. Another thing about neat muggings is that they do not leave behind the small, stupid evidence that real violence spills everywhere. This scene had been edited. It was violence with manners. Kramer's voice softened a fraction, which is his version of concern. You think it ties to your photo business? I think a man who sells pressure does not die by coincidence the same week his assistant starts receiving shadowless pictures, I said. Kramer grunted. Tell Wolfe that. I will, I said. We went back. It was close to midnight when I returned to the brownstone. Wolfe had gone upstairs, because even murder must not interfere with his schedule. I let myself in quietly, hung up my coat, and headed for bed. I did not make it. When I reached the front hall, I noticed the mail slot in the door. Something white showed at the edge, like a tongue. My spine tightened. There is only one kind of thing that slides under Wolfe's door at midnight, and it is never a Christmas card. I pulled it out carefully. A photograph. Same size, same gloss, same quality. I carried it to the office, turned on the lamp, and laid it on Wolfe's desk. Same corner, 6th and 39th. Same hard noon light. Same obedient shadows from every upright object. And in the center, a figure with no shadow, not Lila this time, Grant Mallory. He stood on that street as if he owned it. Coat open, head turned slightly as if he had heard his name. His shoes were planted in bright daylight, and beneath them there was nothing. No shadow, no proof of weight. He looked like a man pasted into noon. I flipped it over. The stamp was there again, Klein Repro, with a fresh ticket number. And there was something else. A smudge near the bottom edge, faint but real, like someone had handled it with dirty fingers. I rubbed my thumb near it without touching it directly, and the grit felt fine, almost sandy. It did not feel like anything from our neighborhood. West 35th has soot, not sand. It has winter salt, not pale grit. I stared at it until my eyes hurt. Then I went upstairs and knocked on Wolfe's bedroom door. His voice came, irritated and awake, because Wolfe sleeps like a man guarding a treasure. What is it, Archie? I have something, I said, and it is not polite. There was a pause. Then the door opened. Wolfe stood in his robe, face calm, eyes sharp. I held the photograph out. Second one, Mallory. Same corner, same noon, same missing shadow. And there's grit on the back that does not belong to this house, this block, or this city. Wolfe took it, studied it in silence. The light in the hall caught his face and made it look carved. Finally he spoke. So, Mr. Mallory is dead, and the author of these communications has progressed from warning to proclamation. I kept my voice low. You think it is the same person? Wolfe's eyes did not leave the photograph. Yes, the style is consistent, the message is consistent, the intention is escalating. Mallory's death was staged, I said. Kramer thinks so too, even if he hates admitting it. Wolfe nodded once. And now we have grit. I said, what does grit mean to you? Wolfe looked up at me, and there was a cold satisfaction in his gaze that I did not like. It means, he said, that the sender has made an error or a confession. We will determine which. He turned back toward the stairs. Archie, in the morning, you will return to Carlin Repro and obtain the job file for this new ticket number. You will also inform Miss Hart that her employer is dead. I blinked. You want me to tell her? Yes, Wolfe said. Truth is safer than imagination also. Her reaction will be informative. He went back to his room and closed the door with quiet finality. I stood alone in the hall, holding the smell of paper and grit and the thought of a man placed like punctuation under a street lamp. The papers would call it random because random is easier than thinking. But someone was thinking. Someone was thinking hard, at noon, with no mercy. Chapter 5. Grain, glue, and a vanishing direction. Wolfe studied the new photograph, the way he studies an ailing orchid, with offense first and curiosity second. In the plant rooms, anything that insults his standards gets corrected or discarded. In his office, anything that insults his intelligence gets dissected. It was mid-morning. The house had settled into its weekday rhythm, Fritz moving like a quiet theorem between kitchen and dining room, the street outside providing its usual chorus of engines and impatience. Wolfe had finished breakfast, had endured my report about Kramer's midnight visit without visible gratitude, and had taken the shadowless Mallory print as if it were a personal challenge delivered by hand. Now, he sat in the red leather chair, magnifier in one hand, the photograph in the other, and silence in the room had thickened until I could have spread it on toast. I tried to be patient. I even tried to look intelligent while being patient, which is harder. After 10 minutes of watching Wolfe angle the paper toward the window, away from the window, then toward the lamp, like a jeweler hunting a flaw, my patience started to creak. Anytime you feel like sharing, I said. I have a whole day I would love to waste. Wolfe did not look up. Be quiet, Archie. I am quiet, I said. I am also employed. He made a sound that meant my employment was regrettable. Then he shifted the magnifier a fraction and held the print at an angle that caught the light in a thin sheen. I watched his eyes. Wolfe's eyes do not wander. They move with purpose, like a pointer in a lecture. At last he spoke, not to me exactly, but to the photograph. It is constructed. That, I said. I could have told you for free. You could have told me, Wolfe replied, and I would have ignored you for free. He set the magnifier down, reached to the desk, and took up a different lens, a heavier one with a small handle, the sort of magnifier that makes a man feel like a scientist, even if he is only inspecting postage stamps. Come here, he said. When Wolfe invites you closer, it means he has found something he considers worth showing, which is rare and therefore alarming. I crossed to his side and leaned in. He held the photograph at the edge where Mallory's coat met the background. Under normal viewing, it was clean. Under Wolfe's magnifier, it became a landscape of tiny dots and fibers. Look at the grain, Wolfe said. I looked. At first, I saw only what you always see in a printed photo when you enlarge it enough, a pattern, a texture, a field of microscopic decisions. Then Wolfe shifted the lens a millimeter. There, he said, and I saw it. The grain changed, not in a natural gradient, but in a seam. A line so subtle it could hide in pride. But there, one side had a slightly different dot pattern, a slightly different noise. It was like two fabrics stitched together with thread the same color, but not the same weave. Two sources, I murmured. Yes, Wolfe said. Two photographs married together, meticulous alignment. The base image is a true street photograph. The figure is inserted from another image. The compositor blended the boundary, then retouched the pavement. He did it with skill, but he did not do it with perfection. I straightened. So it is not just a composite. It is a composite with intent. Someone wants it to look like one moment. Wolfe lowered the print and picked up the earlier one, the Lila Hart photograph. He held them side by side like a judge comparing signatures. The technique is consistent, he said. The author is the same, or trained by the same hand. The selection of noon is deliberate. The elimination of the shadow is deliberate, I said. If the goal were beauty, they would have erased wrinkles. Wolfe's eyes flicked to me. Precisely. Shadows do not flatter. They testify. He tapped the photograph with one finger, gentle but final. A shadow is geometry. It proves a direction. It points away from the sun. It points toward geography. I frowned. Toward geography. Wolfe's voice took on the patient tone he uses when explaining something to me that he thinks should have been obvious at birth. If you know the time and you see the shadows, you know the sun's position. If you know the sun's position, you know the camera's facing. If you know the camera's facing, you know where the photographer stood relative to the subject. In short, a shadow is evidence that cannot be argued with. I nodded slowly. So by removing Lila's shadow, they did not only make her look strange, they erased our ability to reverse, engineer the setup. Correct, Wolfe said. They removed the one element that would allow us to calculate the exact orientation. They left the shadows of others, but the key shadow was the subject's. It is the subject's shadow that anchors the geometry. I thought about that. The city corner, the noon light, the deliberate absence. That means the missing shadow is not a flourish, it is a sabotage. Wolfe's mouth tightened in satisfaction. At last, I moved back to my chair and sat, because Wolfe is at his worst when you stand near him too long. All right, shadows point away from the sun. At noon they are short, still directional, but what do we do with that now? Wolfe looked at the grit, smudged back of the Mallory print, then at the envelope it had arrived in, then at me. We find the direction that vanished. That sounds poetic, I said, and also expensive. It is neither, Wolfe said. It is practical. The author wishes to obscure his method, which indicates that his method is traceable. I leaned forward. We have the print shop, we have the job ticket. We have a man in a cap picking up the first print. We probably have a similar pickup for the second. We have grit on the back. Wolfe nodded once. Yes, the grit is not incidental. It is transferred from an environment. It will lead us to a location if we are not lazy. I grunted, fine. How do you want to analyze dirt taste test? Wolfe's glare would have curdled milk. You will take it to someone who knows. You mean the police lab, I said. I mean, Wolfe replied, Simone competent, who will not demand that I fill out a form in triplicate. That narrowed it down in Wolfe's mind to a list of about 2 people in the entire city. He reached into a drawer and took out a small, clean envelope, the kind we use for evidence when Wolfe remembers we are dealing with a physical world. He handed it to me. You will collect a sample of the grit from the photograph without contaminating it, he said. You will also collect a sample from the street where Mr. Mallory was found, and any residue from Miss Hart's workplace, if you can obtain it. Then you will take these samples to Mr. Zek. I blinked. Zek. Wolfe's eyes stayed calm. Not that Zek, another, a mineralogist I once employed in a matter involving counterfeit gemstones. Of course you have a mineralogist, I said. Normal people have plumbers. Wolfe ignored that. He picked up the Mallory photograph again and studied the bottom edge where the grit smudge lay, faint as a thumbprint of sand. Also, Wolfe said, you will return to Klein Repro. I was planning to, I said. Kramer can get the footage officially, but I can get it sooner unofficially. We need the job file for the second ticket number. Yes, Wolfe said, and you will ask for the original digital file if it exists on their system. I raised a brow. Print shops do not keep files forever. They keep them long enough to be useful, Wolfe said. And this occurred within hours. The file may still be cached. If it is, we will discover metadata, origin, software. Perhaps even the machine that created it. Unless the composer was smart, I said. Wolfe's eyes sharpened. He has already demonstrated that he is not smart enough. I almost asked how, then remembered I have learned more by waiting than by talking. Wolfe placed both photographs on his desk, aligned like exhibits at a trial. Archie, he said, observe the selection of subjects, first Miss Hart, then Mr. Mallory. What does that suggest? I thought. Escalation, also control. Whoever is doing this can pick targets and produce an image quickly. They are close enough to the situation to choose meaningful people. More, Wolfe pressed. They might be framing someone, I said, making it look like Miss Hart is unreliable, or not present, or dishonest, then making Mallory look the same, maybe to imply he was involved with her, or to imply he is also unreal, but Mallory is dead, so the message might be, you can be erased. Wolfe nodded slightly. Yes, and you will inform Miss Hart of Mr. Mallory's death, as I instructed. I grimaced. She will take it badly. Perhaps, Wolfe said. Perhaps she will take it truthfully. Either way, we will learn. I stood, because Wolfe had that look that means the meeting is over. Before I go, tell me one thing. Wolfe's eyes lifted. 1. Do you think Mallory's death was part of the same plan, or a reaction? I asked. Wolfe paused. That pause meant he was choosing honesty. I do not yet know, he said. But the second photograph being delivered here, under my door, indicates intention. The author is not merely committing violence. He is communicating, he is guiding, he is attempting to direct our attention. To where? I asked. Wolfe's mouth set. To the wrong place. Most likely, which is fortunate. A man who tries to mislead Wolfe must first reveal where he stands. I left the office with the evidence envelope in my pocket and a head full of noonlight. At the front door, I paused, because for a moment I could almost see the invisible geometry Wolfe was talking about. Shadows as arrows, shadows as proof, shadows as the only honest things in a dishonest world. If you erase a shadow, you erase a direction. And when someone works that hard to erase direction, it means the direction matters. Chapter 6. The corner that doesn't match itself. I went back to 6th and 39th with a pocket compass, a folded photograph, and the kind of mood that makes a man willing to argue with a lamppost. New York had already done its part by being loud, crowded, and convinced it was innocent. I intended to prove it was lying. The first time I came here with Lila, I used my eyes and the photograph, and the simple truth that concrete does not improvise. This time I brought hardware. Wolfe's talk about shadows and geometry had planted a splinter in my mind, and I wanted it out. At 10:30, the corner looked ordinary. Vendors, taxis, a man hauling a hand truck like it owed him money. I stood near the curb with the photograph held at chest height and did what Wolfe would have done if Wolfe ever did anything outdoors. I compared. The brick wall behind where Lila stood in the print was real. Same alternating pattern, same patched section near the bottom where somebody had repaired old damage and done a sloppy job. I could put my finger on the exact brick that had a pale chip in the corner. That was not coincidence. Whoever built the image had used a real photograph of this place, or had made sure to include details that would survive scrutiny. That should have satisfied me. It did not, because the more you stare at a lie, the more it starts to sweat. I looked down. In the photograph, near Lila's feet, there was a curb cut, a sloped section of curb leading to the crosswalk, meant for wheelchairs, strollers, and anyone who prefers their ankles intact. In the print it looked clean, with a crisp edge, the kind of cut that comes from a new contract and a city inspector who wants his lunch break. But the curb cut in front of me was different, not dramatically. Not enough for a casual glance, enough for a man with a bad attitude and a pocket compass. The angle of the slope was wrong. The concrete had a different aggregate. The wear patterns were older and softer, as if thousands more shoes had scraped it. There was also a small metal plate embedded near the edge that was not in the photo. I crouched, ignoring the looks from people who believe any man crouching in the street is either insane or about to steal something. I traced the edge of the curb cut with my eyes, then compared it to the photograph. Wrong era, I muttered. Wrong contract. City work leaves fingerprints. The Department of Transportation changes standards the way a man changes hats. The slope angle, the tactile bumps, even the width can date a curb cut if you know what you're looking for, or you know a man who would know. Wolfe would know by calling someone. I know by being stubborn. I took out the compass. I held it flat, waited for the needle to settle, and noted the direction the street ran. Then I held the photograph and looked at the shadows of the passers-by in the image. Even with Lila's shadow erased, the other shadows gave away the sun's position. Wolfe was right. Shadows point away from the sun. At noon, they are short, but they are still arrows. The arrows in the photograph suggested one orientation. The street in front of me suggested another. Not wildly different, just enough, like a man's signature when he is nervous. I stood and backed up a step to get the full view again. Brick wall matched, storefront matched, the print shop matched, yet the curb cut did not, and that meant something else might not. I walked the length of the block, eyes scanning, comparing corners, storefronts, window placements. The photograph had been built to survive a glance, and maybe even a careful stare, but it had also been built by a human, and humans get lazy in the places they think no one will check. Halfway down the block I stopped dead. A second curb cut Semez style as the one in the photograph. Same crisp edge, same slope, same lack of the metal plate. But it was not on 6th and 39th. It was on a different intersection 2 blocks away, where the buildings had similar brickwork, and the street angle was just close enough to fool a camera. If you cropped it right and framed it tight, you could make one place pretend to be another. I felt a slow grin creep in, and it was not friendly. Fine, I said under my breath. So you built a corner. I went back to the brownstone with that thought chewing on me. Wolfe was in the office, of course, because Wolfe is always in the office when the world is inconvenient. He looked up as I entered, and his eyes took in my face the way a bartender takes in a man's posture and decides whether to call the bouncer. You have found something, he said. I found several somethings, I replied, dropping into my chair. The brick pattern behind Lila is real, matches this corner. But the curb cut in the photograph does not match the curb cut at this corner. Wrong slope, wrong wear, wrong embedded plate. It looks like a newer install than what's there now, or an install from a different contract area. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Continue. I walked the nearby blocks, I said. There is another intersection with a curb cut that matches the photograph. Same slope, same edge, same feel. If you framed it right, you could steal that curb cut and paste it into the 6th and 39th image. Wolfe's mouth tightened with satisfaction. So the corner does not match itself. Exactly, I said. It is 2 places pretending to be one. Wolfe nodded slowly, like an alibi wearing somebody else's coat. I blinked. Wolfe had stolen my own metaphor before I could use it. I resented him for that, the way a man resents losing a bet he had not placed yet. There is more, I said. The grit smear. I took the sample like you told me, and I took it to your mineralogist. His verdict is not romantic, but it is useful. Industrial sand, the kind used near rail yards and construction staging, not what you find on midtown sidewalks. It has a specific grain size and a specific mineral mix. He said it shows exposure to heavy abrasion, like being tracked around on concrete near machinery. Wolfe's eyes held mine. So the grit comes from a location with industrial sand, and the photograph's background is a location that is not purely midtown. Right, I said, which suggests the composer assembled the image somewhere else, or carried it through somewhere else, or both. Wolfe leaned back slightly. You have now produced a location type: rail yards, construction, staging, industrial sand. I nodded. And you have a dead man who sold protection and had reasons to walk alone only if someone invited him. Plus a print shop used as the production outlet, plus a fake name on the job ticket. Wolfe's gaze lowered to the photographs on his desk. Then our author is both careful and careless. He constructs images to deceive, yet his deception requires materials from his own environment. That is vanity. Or habit, I said. People carry their habits like lint. Wolfe's eyes sharpened. Archie, you will compile a list of locations in Manhattan, where industrial sand is common. Rail yards, large construction sites, areas with ongoing work involving ballast or abrasive sand. I spread my hands. That is half the island. Not if you are intelligent, Wolfe said. You will narrow it. Consider proximity to the print shop, proximity to Moreland and Pierce, and proximity to where Mallory was killed. The author moves. We will map his movement. I sighed. You want geography. You always want geography, because criminals are physical, Wolfe said. They live somewhere, they walk somewhere, they carry grit. I leaned forward, and the same corner being two places, that means the photos were meant to misdirect us, to keep us fixated on 6th and 39th, while the real assembly or capture happened elsewhere. Precisely, Wolfe said. We are being shown a stage set. And stage sets have warehouses, I said. Wolfe looked pleased in the way a man looks pleased when a student finally learns to multiply. Now, Wolfe said, the question becomes, where was Miss Hart actually photographed for insertion, and where was Mr. Mallory photographed? If those were not taken at 6th and 39th, then the author has access to subjects in other environments. I frowned. Mallory might have been photographed anywhere. He had a face that enjoyed being photographed. But Lila, the insert shot of her must be clean. It looks like a candid from close range, not a long lens. Someone was near her. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Near her at her workplace, or near her at a location she visits routinely, or near her when she did not notice, which is most people most of the time. I sat back, so the next move is to figure out where she goes, where she could have been captured, and who could have captured her. And Wolfe added, to determine what Mr. Mallory knew that required his removal. I gave him a look. You think the killer was not trying to punish Lila. You think the killer was trying to silence Mallory. Wolfe's voice was calm. Mallory sold pressure. That means he possessed information that could damage someone. He was also arrogant enough to believe he could manage the situation. Such men make enemies among those who prefer secrecy. I nodded slowly. And now he is a period under a street lamp. Wolfe's mouth tightened. Yes, I stood. What do you want next? Another trip outdoors. Wolfe's eyes flicked to the clock. First, lunch then. You will visit Moreland and Pierce again. You will ask to see their security footage for the morning, Miss Hart. Receive the envelope. You will observe who speaks to her now that Mallory is dead, and you will quietly determine whether she is truly only an assistant, or whether she has been buying silence for someone else without knowing it. I picked up my coat, so the corner is two corners, and the grit is a rail yard, and our culprit is trying to make geography vanish. Wolfe nodded once. And yet, Archie, geography always returns. That is its virtue. It does not care what a criminal wishes. I left the office and headed for the door, feeling the city waiting outside, loud and indifferent, pretending it had nothing to do with it. But the street was already coughing up tells, and I intended to keep listening until it started naming names. Chapter 7. The Man Who Prints Lies. If you want to find a man who prints lies, you do not start with the lie. You start with the part of the lie that costs money. Klein Repro had a ticket number for the second photograph and a timestamp for when it was printed. That meant somebody paid again, and if they paid again, they either walked in again or sent in a runner. Either way, a print shop is not a confessional, but it is a place where habits show up. I went back with my notebook, my practiced smile, and the quiet certainty that if you ask the right question in the right tone, people begin to remember details they were ready to forget. Victor Klein did not look happy to see me. That was a good sign. You again, he said. I told you what I could. You told me what you knew, I said. Today I want what your system knows. His mouth tightened. Polis been here, took footage. That is their hobby, I said. Mine is speed. I want the job file for the second ticket, and I want to know where the file came from. Klein hesitated, then sighed with the weariness of a man trying to keep printers fed and customers civil. Come on. In the cramped back office, he pulled up the order. Same pattern, 2 prints, same size, same stock, paid in cash this time. That was new. Cash, I said. Convenient. People do it, Klein muttered. Not when they want receipts, I said. He scrolled. Name entered is Owen Pike. That made my eyebrows climb. That is not P. Sloan. No, Klein said. This one, the guy said it was for Owen Pike, like he was picking up for somebody. Or he wanted you to write a name you could blame later, I said. Klein frowned. You saying Owen Pike is trouble? I am saying anyone connected to this is trouble, I replied. Who is Pike? Klein's face shifted into the expression a man gets when a name brings annoyance. He's a printer, not here. He runs a lab. Old school, film, chemicals, all that. Some artists use him, some creeps use him. He does specialty work. Specialty, I repeated. Klein shrugged. He can do things, stitch negatives, fix exposures, make old photos look new. He is proud of it. I leaned forward. Where is his lab? Klein named an address in Long Island City, near warehouses and rail lines. My mind immediately returned to the grit, industrial sand, rail yards, construction, staging. The city's dirty backstage. All right, I said. You just became useful. He scowled. I became busy. Get out. I left and called Wolfe from a payphone because I like the drama of payphones, and also because Wolfe enjoys being updated like a general. Name is Owen Pike, I told him. Not the pickup name, the lab name. Klein says he is a specialty printer with a darkroom lab in Long Island City. Wolfe's voice came calm through the receiver. Long Island City is compatible with industrial sand near rail yards. Yes, I said. Also, the second order was paid in cash. Good, Wolfe said. Go there. I did. The building Pike worked out of looked like it had been built to store disappointment. A brick warehouse with a metal door, faded paint, and a small sign that said Pike Imaging in letters that had stopped believing in themselves. Inside, the air smelled like old paper and chemicals, the sour bite of fixer and something metallic. You could almost hear photographs developing in the dark. A man in a stained apron looked up from a workbench. He was in his 30s, thin, with hair pulled back, and eyes that had the bright, restless intensity of someone who thinks the world is stupid, but his hands are genius. Yeah, he said. We are closed. You are open enough to talk, I said. My name is Archie Goodwin. Do not care, he replied. If you want prints, email. I do not want prints, I said. I want lies. His eyes narrowed. That sounds like police. It sounds like trouble, I said. Police are just one brand of trouble. He hesitated. Something in my tone, or in my face, told him this was not a customer complaint about blurry wedding photos. He wiped his hands on the apron and stepped around the bench. What lies? He asked. I pulled out the Mallory photograph. This kind. He took it, and the change in him was immediate. The irritation became interest. His fingers held the paper the way a musician holds an instrument. This is good, he said softly. Then he caught himself and looked up. Where did you get this? It was delivered to my employer, I said. Under his door, and the man in the picture is dead. Pike's eyes flicked down again, his throat moved. Dead. Yes, I said. So we can skip the part where you pretend this is art. He swallowed, then set the photograph on the bench and leaned over it, studying the grain like Wolfe had. He did not need a magnifier. He knew where to look because he knew what he had done. Okay, he said. Okay, I can explain the process. Explain it to a judge later, I said. Right now explain it to me. Did you make this? His jaw tightened. I printed it. Printed, I repeated, or composed. He gave me an annoyed look. I can do both. Film scans, composites. People bring me negatives. I stitch them. People bring me files. I clean them. People want something that looks like it was shot in one moment. I can make it look like that. Chemistry does not care about your morality. That's a pretty speech, I said. But chemistry also does not take the blame for murder. You do. His eyes flared. I did not kill anyone. I did not accuse you of killing, I said. I accused you of printing lies that led to harm. He stared at the photograph a long moment. Then he said, I did not choose the subject. Who did? I asked. I was hired, he said, through a middleman. Name, I said. Pike hesitated. I let the silence sit on him. Silence is heavy in a dark room. It makes people talk just to hear a voice. I do not know his real name, Pike said. He came twice, brought cash, brought requirements. He did not want receipts. He did not want emails. What did he want? I asked. Pike's mouth twisted. He wanted noon. He wanted that corner. He wanted the figure inserted clean, and he wanted a specific thing. What? I said. Pike's eyes met mine. He said, erase direction. I felt my stomach tighten. There it was. Wolfe's shadow lecture turned into a client request. Erase direction, I repeated. Meaning remove the shadow. Pike nodded, uneasy now. He said the shadow gave away too much. He did not want anyone calculating where the camera was. He did not want the facing. So you burned it out, I said. I did not just burn it out, Pike snapped, defensive. You cannot just burn out a shadow and not leave a hole. I had to rebuild the pavement. I had to match texture. I had to make it believable. It is believable, I said, to anyone not looking. He flinched at that. Pride is a delicate thing. It bruises easily. Who was the middleman? I asked again. Describe him. Pike exhaled, medium height, lean, baseball cap, hoodie. He kept his face down. He talked like he practiced it, like he had lines. What about his hands? I asked. Pike blinked. Hands. Yes, I said. People forget faces. They remember hands. He frowned, thinking. He had nice hands, not rough. No grease. Clean nails. He wore gloves once. Thin ones, like he did not want prints. The other time he did not. That snagged. Nice hands, clean nails. Gloves. My mind went back to Mallory's hands, expensive and steady, but Pike was describing the middleman, not the client. Still, the middleman had manners, which meant he was hired, not desperate. What did he give you to insert? I asked. A photo of Lila Hart, a photo of Grant Mallory. Where did those come from? Pike shrugged. He brought them. Separate images, good quality. The woman was from a close shot, maybe a lobby camera or a phone. The man was from a cleaner source, maybe a promotional shot, but angled to match. He told me the location needed to be that corner. He wanted it to look like both subjects were there at noon. And the grit, I said, nodding at his bench. The smudge on the back. Industrial sand. Pike looked down and grimaced. This place is near rail lines. Sand gets everywhere. It is used for traction and construction. It gets in shoes. It gets on tables. I try to keep clean, but it is impossible. So the sand came from here, I said. He hesitated, probably, or from where he brought the prints. But yes, this neighborhood has it. I took out my notebook and wrote the address again, as if it would pin the truth in place. Now, I said, tell me about the location requirement. You keep saying he wanted that corner. Why would he care where the base photo was taken? Pike's eyes darted. He said it had to match something, like it had to line up with an original. He wanted it to survive scrutiny. He said, people will check the street. People like me, I said. He shrugged. People like you. I nodded slowly. So he anticipated investigation, and he still ordered the shadow removed, even though it is the most suspicious alteration. Pike's voice turned defensive again. He wanted suspicion, but he wanted suspicion that pointed nowhere. That is what he meant by erase direction. Make it creepy. Make it obvious enough to frighten, but remove the one part that could guide you back. That was almost elegant, almost. I said, "Owen Pike, you are going to give me everything you have, job notes, files, any cached versions, payment details, dates, times, anything, because if the police arrive before I leave, you will be explaining to them why you helped stage a message linked to murder." Pike's face went pale. I did not know it would be murder. "I believe you," I said, "but believing you does not protect you." He swallowed hard. Okay. I have the files. I keep everything for a month. Drives are cheap. Paranoia is expensive." He moved to a computer and started clicking through folders, his fingers fast and sure. He found a directory with a date stamp and 2 subfolders. "Here," he said, "the composites, the source images, the exports." He brought them on a flash drive. I copied them. Then I gave him the prints. "Flash drive," I said. "You kept it." "No," Pike said. "He took it, but I copied. Like I said, paranoia." I could have hugged him, but I have standards. I took photos of the file names with my phone, and then Pike copied the folder to a clean drive I had brought, because I have learned the value of being prepared when criminals are careless. When I got back to the brownstone, Wolfe was waiting in his chair with the calm of a man who has already decided what the universe ought to do next. I handed him the drive. He did not touch it immediately. He looked at me. "You have met the artisan." "Yes," I said. "Owen Pike. Specialty printer. Thinks chemistry absolves him. He admits he can stitch negatives, rebuild pavement, burn out shadows. He printed both composites. He did not choose Lila. He was hired through a middleman, cash, no receipts, and the instruction was explicit." Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "Erase direction." "Exactly," I said. "The middleman wanted the shadow removed because it reveals camera facing. Pike says the client wanted it creepy and obvious, but also wanted to make sure we could not reverse engineer where the camera stood." Wolfe's gaze stayed steady, and the satisfaction in it was cold. Only one kind of client fears direction more than identification. "Someone in hiding, where they stood," I said. Wolfe nodded once. "Yes, someone whose physical position at a crucial moment would reveal guilt." I leaned back. "So the photos are not only threats, they are camouflage, a way to frighten and mislead while protecting a real location." Wolfe finally took the drive, held it as if it were a live insect, and set it on his desk with care. "Archie," he said, "we have moved from guessing to knowing. We have the laboratory, we have the method. Now we will determine who required the direction to vanish. And then," I said, "we will find out why Mallory had to die." Wolfe's eyes lowered to the photographs again, and for a moment the office felt colder. "We will," he said, "and we will do it by restoring what the criminal tried to erase, direction, place, and the truth of where someone stood." Chapter 8. The alibi made of place Lila Hart's story had been straight as a ruler, and that is exactly why Wolfe distrusted it. Straight stories can be true, or they can be rehearsed. The difference shows up in small places, the way tire tracks show up when a car hops a curb. You do not look at the driver's smile, you look at the rubber and the scrape on the concrete. Wolfe sat in his chair, with the file folder open on his lap, the one I had built from 2 days of legwork, print tickets, a mineralogist's verdict, and Owen Pike's sudden respect for consequences. On his desk, the 2 shadowless photographs lay side by side, like exhibits at a trial. He had not allowed me to put them away. Wolfe keeps the offender in sight. I was in my chair with my notebook and a cup of coffee that was doing its best. Wolfe said, "Archie, read me Miss Hart's movements on the night of Mr. Mallory's death." "I already did," I said. "Read them again," Wolfe replied. "The second reading is for what you missed the first time." I sighed and opened my notes. Mallory was killed at approximately 9:45. Kramer's estimate, medical will tighten it, but that is the window. Lila left Moreland and Pierce at 6:10, according to building security logs. She went to Mallory Protective Services office on West 27th at 6:40. She signed in with the receptionist. She delivered a stack of files to a records clerk named Mavis Dean. There is a camera in the lobby that shows her entering and leaving. She left at 7:15. She then went to a deli near 9th Avenue and 31st. The deli owner remembers her because she asked for tea and looked sick. She paid at 7:32. After that, she took a taxi home. The cab record confirms pickup at 7:40, drop-off at 8:10. Her building doorman saw her enter. She did not leave again. Wolfe's eyes stayed half-lidded. An alibi anchored by a security camera and a signed log. Anchored hard, I said. If she killed Mallory, she would need a helicopter and a talent for teleportation. Wolfe nodded once. Then she did not kill him. I blinked. You sound disappointed. I am relieved, Wolfe said. I dislike simple answers. They insult the effort. I leaned forward. So what is the point of reviewing her alibi? Kramer will do that and then still glare at me. Wolfe tapped the file folder lightly. Because the alibi is part of the design, I frowned. You think the killer arranged her alibi? I think the killer anticipated it, Wolfe replied. A murderer who intends to manipulate an investigation does not merely avoid suspicion. He directs suspicion. He needed everyone staring at Miss Hart's face, not at the ground beneath her feet. The ground, I repeated. You mean place again. Wolfe's eyes sharpened. Always place, Archie. What did the intermediary instruct Mr. Pike to remove? Direction, I said. Erase direction. And why, Wolfe asked. Does one erase direction? So we cannot figure out where the camera stood. I said. So we cannot reconstruct the photographer's location, so we cannot map the real street. Wolfe inclined his head. That was approval. I sat back. All right, composite. 2 places pretending to be one. That is a more precise insult. Fine, I said. So the real street matters. Wolfe, what real street? He looked at me as if I were a student asking for the answer key. You have the data. Use it. I grimaced. Industrial sand rail yard area, Long Island City. Pike's lab near rail lines. Mallory killed on 9th. Print shop on 6th, Moreland. And Pierce downtown. That gives us a triangle of movement. The middleman traveled between those points. The client likely stayed near one. Wolfe said nothing. That meant continue. I tried again. The photos show 6th and 39th as a stage set, because it is easy to check and easy to talk about. We go there, we stare, we argue about curb cuts. Meanwhile, the real location where Mallory was watched is somewhere else, somewhere the killer stood. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Yes, and if we find where he stood, we find who he is. That was the heart of it. And it felt as solid as the brownstone walls. I said, Kramer told me the mugging scene was too neat. Body placed under a street lamp. That means the killer wanted it found, and wanted it found in a specific way. If the killer also wanted the photographs to be creepy but untraceable, then he was shaping the story from start to finish. Wolfe's mouth tightened. Correct. A man who shapes stories fears facts. I looked down at the photographs again. Mallory under noon light with no shadow. Lila under noon light with no shadow. 2 people made weightless by someone with a darkroom and a purpose. You think the photographs are not mainly about Lila, I said slowly. They are about the killer's position. He is terrified that the investigation will become geographical. Wolfe's eyes held mine. Exactly. I leaned forward. Then the question is, what position? Where could someone watch Mallory on 9th Avenue, near that lamp, and strike clean, quick, and controlled? A pro, or a controlled amateur? Wolfe's face stayed calm. And where could someone be physically that would be incriminating if direction were calculated? I stared at him. You think the killer was nearby, in a place that would put him there with no excuse, like a building with a view, or a security post, or a vehicle, or a client meeting, Wolfe said, or a delivery, or a routine that would otherwise be invisible. I rubbed my forehead. So we map the street lamp. We look for camera coverage, lines of sight, places to stand. We see who had access. Wolfe nodded. Yes, but we do it without announcing it. Too late, I muttered, thinking of Kramer. Wolfe ignored that. Now, tell me about Miss Hart delivering files across town at the time of death. That is the lobby sign, in and the camera at Mallory Protective, I said. She was there 6:40 to 7:15, not 9:45. At 9:45 she was home, according to her doorman. Wolfe lifted a finger. At the time of death she was home. Yes, but her alibi story, her errand story, her signed log, all of it is what the murderer needed you to hear. I frowned. Why would he care about a file delivery earlier in the evening? Wolfe's eyes sharpened. Because it attaches her to Mr. Mallory in an official way. It provides motive in the minds of the foolish assistant with receipts. Assistant hears names. Assistant could blackmail. Assistant could be punished. The murderer wanted a simple narrative available to the newspapers, to the police, and to any employer eager to protect itself. I sat very still. So Lila was meant to be the obvious story. The anxious assistant, the dead boss, the staged mugging. Meanwhile, the real story is where the killer stood. Wolfe's voice was almost gentle. Yes, Archie, the trap is always simplicity. I let out a slow breath. All right then, we do place. How? Wolfe reached to his desk and took up a sheet of paper on which he had written 3 addresses in his bold hand. First, he said, you will return to the scene on 9th Avenue with your compass and your eyes. You will identify all lines of sight, windows, doorways, vehicles, cameras. Second, you will obtain from Inspector Kramer the list of persons whose movements place them within 3 blocks at the relevant time. Third, you will discover who arranged for Mr. Mallory to be alone. I stared. That third one is a tall order. It is an essential order, Wolfe replied. Mr. Mallory sold protection, yet he walked unprotected. Why? He either trusted someone or believed he was meeting an opportunity. That belief came from somewhere, I said. Mallory came to Moreland and Pierce yesterday, right after Lila got the first photograph. He was worried about her becoming careless. If someone wanted him alone that night, they could have lured him by claiming Lila was in trouble or by offering him information about who sent the photo. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Yes, and who would know how to lure him? I answered without liking it. Someone who knew his habits, someone close, someone in his circle, or someone with access to his calendar. Wolfe nodded. And who, Archie, has access to calendars and schedules? I said it, and the words tasted like pennies. Assistants. Wolfe lifted a hand, not Miss Hart necessarily. Assistants in general, office staff, receptionists, security, anyone who handles movement. I leaned back. So, we look at Mallory Protective Office. Who was there that night? Who saw him leave? Who spoke to him? We look at his phone records if Kramer can get them. Be precisely, Wolfe said. And the direction in the photo, if restored, would reveal the real street. That real street would likely match the environment where the killer met Mallory or watched him. If we identify that street, we identify who could stand there naturally. Wolfe's mouth tightened, pleased. Yes, and you have already begun. You found industrial sand, you found Pike's location, you found a false curb cut. Continue the logic. I stood. Fine, I will go stare at 9th Avenue until it confesses. Wolfe's voice stopped me. Archie, one more thing. I turned. He pointed a thick finger at the Lila photograph. Miss Hart's story has been straight. Straight stories still run over curbs, as you said, but do not mistake straightness for innocence. It may be that Miss Hart is not lying. It may also be that she is being steered, as we are. If the murderer wanted a narrative, he may have planted it in her life long before the first photograph arrived. I felt a small chill. You mean her placement at Moreland and Pierce? Yes, Wolfe said. Mallory placed her there. Mallory is dead. Who benefits from her being there now? I nodded slowly. Moreland and Pierce, or someone inside it. Wolfe's eyes were calm and hard. Or someone inside it who fears where he stood on the night of a murder. I left the office with the case turning in my head like a key in a lock. Outside, the city looked the same as always. People moving too fast, cars honking like geese. Sidewalks pretending they were neutral. But I knew better now. A killer can manufacture a picture, erase a shadow, and hire a man to burn out direction. He can try to make everyone stare at a woman's face. But he cannot erase place. Place stays. And if we found the real street, we would find the man who needed it hidden. Chapter 9. The corner that points to a window wolf does his best work when he does not have to move anything but ideas. By late afternoon, the photographs were still on his desk. The Mallory print on top like a challenge coin. The Lila print beneath it like the opening move that had started the game. The house was quiet except for the muted city noise and the faint, steady hum of the air in the plant rooms upstairs. Wolfe had refused both lunch conversation and my attempts to hurry him, which meant he had found a vein and was mining it. When he finally spoke, it was with the calm certainty that makes a man want to sit up straight. "Archie," he said, "the corner is not 6th and 39th. "I noticed," I replied. The curb cut had an identity crisis. Wolfe's eyes lifted to me briefly, then returned to the papers on his desk. "Your curb cut was a symptom. I have now located the disease." I leaned forward. "You rebuilt the composite." "I restored what the compositor attempted to remove," Wolfe said. "Direction." He picked up a sheet of paper covered with numbers, short lines, and small, neat diagrams. It looked like a map drawn by a man who hates maps. "You did this from the photograph," I said. "From the photograph's honest parts," Wolfe corrected. Brick shadow lines, the tilt of the awning, the height and throw of the street lamp, the position of the window mullions relative to the curb. Each element contains geometry. Each element contains the sun. I glanced at the photos, even with the subject shadow removed. "Especially with it removed," Wolfe said. "The author wished to deprive us of a single anchor. He neglected the fact that the entire world is an anchor if one is not lazy." I grunted. "So where is it?" Wolfe tapped the paper. "A block near the rail yards in Long Island City, not far from Mr. Pike's laboratory. There is a brick facade whose pattern matches the background behind Miss Hart. There is an awning with the same angle, there is a street lamp of the same design and height, and there is a second-floor window with a clear line of sight down a route consistent with Mr. Mallory's movements." My eyebrows climbed. "You are telling me the photograph's background was taken near Pike's lab?" "Yes," Wolfe said, "which is convenient for the compositor and revealing for the client." "Because it puts the real street in the same industrial zone as the grit," I said. Wolfe nodded once. "Correct. It also narrows who could have stood there naturally. That area does not receive casual pedestrians at noon unless they are lost or employed." I felt a small thrill that was half excitement and half dread. "And the window? Why the window?" Wolfe's voice stayed even because the direction points to it. "When the sun angle and the camera facing are restored, the line of sight places the photographer or a watcher near that second-floor window. The criminal wanted you looking at 6th Avenue. He did not want you looking at a modest building near rail yards where a person could observe without being noticed." I stood up. "Give me the address." Wolfe gave it to me without theatrics, as if he were handing me a grocery list. That is Wolfe's style. The drama belongs to other people. "And Archie," he added, "you will proceed with caution if my inference is correct. That window belonged to the murderer on the night Mr. Mallory died. He will not appreciate your curiosity." "I rarely get appreciated," I said, and grabbed my coat. "Long Island City has a different smell from Midtown. Midtown smells like exhaust and money and impatience. Long Island City smells like metal, wet cement, and work that has not been dressed up for tourists. The streets are broader, the buildings more blunt. You can hear trains in the distance like a restless animal." I followed Wolfe's address to a block that looked as if it had been assembled from leftover parts: warehouses, small industrial offices, a few stubborn apartments overground, floor businesses that did not pretend to be charming. The building Wolfe had marked was a 2-story brick structure with a faded sign for a freight forwarding company. The brick pattern was there, just as he had said. The awning was there too, a green canvas tilt that matched the photograph's angle. The street lamp stood at the curb like a quiet sentinel. The sidewalk grit had that pale, abrasive look I had seen on Pike's bench, and on the second floor, facing the street, was a window with a shallow sill. I stood across the street and looked up at it until a passing driver honked at me for existing. Then I crossed and went inside. The ground floor office had a glass door with a buzzer panel and names on peeling labels. 2 of the labels were fresh. One read H. Rudd in clean black type, as if someone had moved in recently and wanted the world to know it. Hank Rudd. The name pinged in my mind. Lila had mentioned Mallory Protective, and in the paperwork I had pulled from public records, there had been a list of corporate officers. Operations Manager, Henry Rudd. He pressed the buzzer. A voice answered. Cautious. Yeah. Delivery, I said. Because delivery is the oldest magic word in the city. There was a pause, then a buzz and the door clicked. Upstairs, the hallway smelled like dust and cheap paint. Rudd's door was closed. I knocked. A man opened it halfway. He was in his 30s, maybe 40, with a tight face and eyes that moved too quickly. His shoes were new, the leather still stiff, the kind a man buys when he is trying to look like nothing is wrong. His shirt was clean but not pressed, like he had slept in a chair and changed on principle. Yes, he said. My name is Archie Goodwin, I replied. I work for Nero Wolfe. The door did not close, but the man's hand tightened on the edge as if he was considering it. Never heard of him, Rudd said. That was a lie. It was also an uncreative lie, which made me more interested. You will, I said. May I come in? Number. Then we can talk here, I said. In the hallway, where neighbors can listen. I am flexible. His jaw tightened after a moment. He opened the door wider and stepped back. The office was sparse. A desk, 2 chairs, a filing cabinet, and a computer. The place looked temporary, like a man camping in his own life. The window faced the street, and the sill was wide enough to rest elbows on. I could picture someone standing there, watching down the block, holding a camera, or simply holding time. Rudd gestured to a chair. I sat. He stayed standing. You are Henry Rudd, I said. Hank, he corrected, too quickly. And you were operations manager for Grant Mallory. His eyes flicked. Mallory is dead. Yes, I said, and that is why I am here. He folded his arms, then unfolded them, then put his hands on the desk as if he needed something solid. His hands were clean. His nails were trimmed. A man who handles schedules and people, not machinery. I have nothing to say, he said. That is a shame, I replied, because the police will have questions, and they are less patient than I am. His eyes narrowed. I did not kill him. I did not say you did, I said. I said you will have questions. Here is the first. Where were you last night? He did not hesitate, which is often a mistake. Out of town. Where? I asked. Philadelphia. That is convenient, I said. Work or pleasure? Work, he said, and his eyes dared me to doubt it. I always doubt, I told him. It is my charm. He gave a short laugh that did not match his face. Look, I handled operations. I handled logistics. Mallory handled clients. He had enemies, talk to them. I intend to talk to everyone, I said, but first I talk to the people who claim they were far away. His mouth tightened. You have nothing. I nodded toward the window. This is a nice view. He did not look. That was answer enough. I stood and walked to the window, as if I were admiring the architecture. Rudd's eyes tracked me like a cat watching a hand near its food. I rested my fingertips on the sill lightly. Then I saw it. A thin smear of pale grit, lodged in the corner where the paint met the wood. Not much. Enough. The same fine industrial sand that had marked the back of Wolfe's copy. The same kind that lived on Pike's bench and in the air near rail lines. I did not touch it bare. I pulled a clean handkerchief from my pocket and brushed a small amount onto the cloth. Rudd's voice snapped. What are you doing? Collecting your view, I said mildly. He stepped toward me, then stopped himself. His control was good, but not perfect. It cracked at the edges. I turned and held the handkerchief up. "You see this? It is dirt," he said. "It is not Midtown dirt," I replied. "It is industrial sand, the same kind that smeared the back of a photograph, that was slid under Nero Wolfe's door. The same kind that connects a darkroom printer to a manufactured corner. And now it is on your windowsill." Rudd's face went paler. "You are insane." "Possibly," I said, "but my employer is not." He reconstructed the real location used in the composite photograph. It pointed to this block, then it pointed to this window. "Here we are." Rudd's mouth opened, then closed. His eyes darted to the door as if calculating distance. I kept my voice calm. Calm is the best way to make a nervous man reveal himself. "You told me you were out of town. Your window tells a different story." "Windows are honest. They collect what men try to shake off." Rudd swallowed. "You cannot prove anything." "Not alone," I agreed. "But you are forgetting that your employer died in a staged mugging, and someone has been manufacturing evidence, and the police will not enjoy hearing that the operations manager was camping in an office with a view of the route." His eyes flashed with anger now, and anger is always more honest than fear. Mallory got what he deserved. I held very still. That is an interesting sentence. He realized he had said it and tried to pull it back, but words do not crawl back into mouths once they escape. I said, "You should come to Wolfe's house." He barked a laugh. "To be accused in a parlor, like some old play." "Exactly," I said. "Wolfe likes old plays because the logic is cleaner. If you do not come, Inspector Kramer will visit, and he will not bring tea." Rudd's breathing was fast. His eyes were fixed on the handkerchief in my fingers, as if it were a gun. "Why would I go?" he demanded. "Because Wolfe already knows the shape of the truth," I said. "He only needs the final names." Rudd stared at me for a long moment. Then his shoulders slumped slightly, the way a man's shoulders do when he realizes his story has holes and someone is finally looking at the ground. "I was not out of town," he said quietly. "But that does not mean I killed him." "It means your alibi was made of air," I said. "And air does not hold up in court." He swallowed. "If I go, what happens?" I gave him my most professional smile. "You sit in Wolfe's office. You answer questions. You listen while he explains what you thought you had hidden. And if you are smart, you tell the truth before he has to prove it the hard way." Rudd's eyes flicked to the window one last time, as if it had betrayed him. Then he nodded once, stiff and resigned. "All right," he said. "I'll come." I walked him out because I did not trust him alone with stairs and exits. In the hallway, his new shoes squeaked faintly, and the sound irritated me. A man who lies should not have shoes that announce themselves. Outside, the rail yards rumbled in the distance, and the street lamp stood waiting for night, like an actor waiting for his cue. I thought of Wolfe in his chair, restoring direction the way a surgeon restores a pulse. Erase direction, the intermediary had said, but direction had returned, and it had pointed to a window where a man with nervous eyes had been standing, watching. Chapter 10. The shadow that testifies when Nero Wolfe calls an office gathering. The brownstone stops being a home and becomes a courtroom that serves no tea until the truth is poured first. By 4 o'clock, the chairs were set. The curtains were drawn to a dignified angle, and Wolfe sat in his red leather chair with the stillness of a judge who hates small talk. They arrived in the order trouble prefers, Lila Hart pale but stubbornly upright, Inspector Kramer carrying his hat like an argument, Victor Klein, uneasy and sweating guilt that was mostly fear of police forms, Owen Pike, stiff, backed, clinging to the idea that chemistry is a priest, then Hank Rudd, suit too new, eyes too careful, taking the farthest chair from Lila as if distance could pass for innocence. Wolfe began without greeting. "Mr. Rudd, you lied about being out of town the night Grant Mallory was killed." Rudd lifted his chin. "You cannot prove that." "I can," Wolfe said. "Industrial sand was found on the back of a photograph delivered under my door. The same sand was found on the sill of your second-floor window in Long Island City, Mr. Goodwin collected it. It matches the grit from Mr. Pike's neighborhood near the rail yards. You were there. Kramer leaned forward. That puts you near the murder, Rudd. Try denying it again. Wolfe raised a hand. Inspector, patience. Mr. Rudd's presence is only the hinge. Now we open the door. He held up the first photograph. This is a composite, 2 images married to look like one moment. The subject's shadow was removed deliberately. Not for beauty. Shadows do not flatter, they testify. A shadow provides direction, and direction provides place. He held up the second photo. Mallory at noon with no shadow. This was delivered after Mallory's death. Same method, same sabotage. Pike swallowed. Wolfe looked at him. Mr. Pike, confirm your instruction. Pike's voice was small. I was hired through a middleman. Cash, no records, he said. Erase direction. Wolfe nodded. Exactly. And only one kind of client fears direction more than identification. A client hiding where he stood. Lila's voice broke in, controlled but sharp. Mr. Wolfe, why was I pulled into this? Because you were bait, Wolfe said. You handled receipts and schedules. You heard names. You could be framed cleanly if the geography stayed dirty. A frightened assistant is a convenient story, especially after her employer dies. Rudd snapped. Mallory was not my employer anymore. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. A revealing sentence. Mallory's death was not random. It was a takeover dressed as a mugging. Kramer's jaw set. Give me the chain, Wolfe obliged, neat as a ledger. Klein Repro printed the images. Pike prepared them in Long Island City. The grit on the photograph betrayed the industrial environment. The corner in the pictures was a stage set. 2 places pretending to be one. When I restored direction using the honest elements, brick, shadow, lines, awning tilt, lamp height, the camera facing pointed to a specific block near the rail yards. It also pointed to a second-floor window with a clear view of Mallory's route. He looked at Rudd. That window belonged to you. Rudd's face tightened. I rent an office. That proves nothing. It proves opportunity, Wolfe said. Now motive. Miss Hart delivered files to Mallory's office that evening. Miss Hart, who told you to sign the log. Lila frowned, then answered slowly. Hank did. He said Mallory wanted a record. Wolfe's voice hardened. There the signed log and the security camera were anchors, not for truth but for narrative. If Mallory died, the world would see you connected to him and stare at your face. Meanwhile, the killer's place would remain unseen. Kramer turned to Rudd. You set it up. You lured him out. Rudd's control cracked. He went where he wanted. He went alone, Wolfe said, because he trusted the machinery you ran. You managed operations. You arranged movement. You could tell him a meeting was safe. You could create a reason. Then you watched from your window while the hit unfolded. Silence settled. Thick and final. Wolfe leaned forward. You did not try to erase a person, Mr. Rudd. You tried to erase a place. Because place, not person, was your alibi. You feared that a shadow would point back to where you stood, so you paid to remove it. Rudd's eyes flicked toward the door. Kramer rose. Wolfe finished. Calm as a closing statement. Inspector, arrest Mr. Rudd. Then obtain Mr. Mallory's phone and appointment records. The lure will be there. Also question the intermediary who delivered cash to Mr. Pike. He will lead you to the hired hand, if Mr. Rudd did not strike the blow himself. Kramer stepped forward. Rudd did not fight, because men who live by control often forget how to struggle. When they were gone, Lila sat very still. So the pictures were never about making me disappear. Wolfe's voice softened, just enough. No, Miss Hart. They were about hiding where someone stood. You will keep your employment if you choose to, and you will choose more carefully whom you serve. Fritz entered quietly, as if tragedy were a visitor that needed a coat taken. Wolfe reached for his book again. The case had ended, as Wolfe prefers, not with drama, but with reason. And outside, the late sun threw shadows onto West 35th Street, like honest testimony.